Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our series of talks around imposter syndrome for the fifth International Imposter Syndrome Awareness Day. I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by Dr. Colin Williams. He's the Business Chief Technology Officer Security at Computer Centre. And in this episode, we're going to dive into his insights on imposter syndrome from a confidence and coaching perspective. So, welcome, Colin, and thank you so much for being here with me today.
Amelia, thanks for having me.
Problem at all. We had a bit of a chat before recording, and one of the things that you mentioned is that you said that you perhaps didn't feel that you typically experienced imposter syndrome. And how would you say that your tough childhood shapes your mindset and your resilience today?
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, I'm probably not the conventional individual when it comes to that. As we were discussing, I had a challenging childhood. I had a parent who was quite an aggressive, dominant parent, and I lost my mother when I was quite young. And therefore, I suppose in my formative years, things could have gone one of two ways. I could have accepted an awful lot of the negativity that came to me from my father, and just effectively just curled up into a corner. Or I could use a lot of that negativity as fuel, to almost to energize me to want to do better, want to do more. And also got me believing I didn't deserve what was happening to me, and I deserved better. And so at quite a young age, I developed my own coping strategies to allow me to get through difficult situations.
Absolutely. And, as we were talking earlier, I resonated, so much with what you said because I came from that, not obviously the same, but a, similar-ish background. And I can relate as well to that, to using it to, do better and be more successful and, not having it, what happened to me define me. And talking of defining moments, was there a defining moment in your life that's solidified your confidence and your ability to tackle anything?
Yeah, I think we touched on the fact when I was quite young, so I suppose primary school before I went to senior school. Um, it was indicating I was a gifted child. I found it quite easy to do technical things. I found it quite easy to do memory-related things, and I found it very easy to do anything that required calculation or problem solving. So the school highlighted that I was a gifted child. The challenge with that is when you're very, very young, you're trying to fit in. Being different isn't necessarily a good thing. So you want to fit in with everyone on the playground, but also I was black. I was from a minority background, so I didn't really fit in at that point because I looked different. And then if I all of a sudden started to highlight that I was a sort of clever kid, that also wasn't very good. So version one, I'd kind of dumbed down a little bit. I kind of dumbed down to be what everyone else called normal, because I thought if I shone too much, then I would look different. But very, very quickly, I then rebelled against that and thought, if I do that, I'm not being me. And so I actually went totally the opposite way. And I thought, at quite an early age, I'd like to be me, the authentic me. So that will be the kid that's a little bit smart, a bit different. My external packaging was black, so I couldn't change that. So I just said, no, moving forward, from this day forward, I'm going to be the best me I can be. And if that means other people can't accept that, fine, I'll find other people. But moving forward for the rest of my life, I'm going to be the best version of me. And then it happened quite a young age.
Absolutely. And again, something I, relate to so much of having those defining moments. And how would you say that your personal experience with resilience has influenced the way that perhaps you coach others?
I believe in people. And I believe that for many people, they just can't see what they can't see about the hidden qualities that they have within. And I mean, they're unique to them, right? And so I often start by coaching when I understand the individual, and I try to get them to surface all those qualities and characteristics that they often keep hidden and never tell anybody else. And the reason why I do that is because if I understand them and can help them to buy into themselves as much as I'm buying into them, that's a good thing. Um, my own journey has allowed me to realize that there are few obstacles that you can't overcome if you almost ignore failure. I've never ever been somebody who's paralyzed by failure, because whatever's in front of me is a lesson to learn or a chance to learn something. And I'll either learn how to get a successful outcome, or I'll learn the things that didn't go well to get a successful outcome, and they'll be better next time. So it almost gave me this thing that when I coach anybody, I almost encourage them to believe that this failure thing we can park for now. We're going to attempt some things, and there will be some outcomes, and the outcomes can be as expected, or there can be an outcome that requires work. And if it requires work, get some inputs to help you, but never ever get to a point where the thing in front of you is so debilitating that you don't believe you can overcome it. So if you have a mindset like that, you almost think, I can tackle anything in front of me as long as I accept that whatever happens next is something I can learn from for whatever happens after that.
Absolutely. And how do you help people overcome imposter syndrome when they deeply believe that they're not good enough?
As we touched on, there's no silver bullet, right? And some of those simplistic statements that you hear from people, just do this or just be like this, and it goes away. Absolute rubbish. Um, there are initial conversations to try and understand where it stemmed from, right? It could be childhood things, it could be a parent, it could be a sibling, it could be a past experience that then becomes this deep-rooted, indelible thing they can't get beyond. So there's a bit of that. But there's also some basic things that I kind of almost apply to my own selves, which is we all have feelings of self-doubt, right? We all have feelings where confidence can be lacking. But I always say if you define confidence to or confine it to a task or an outcome, right? I don't believe anyone has this ubiquitous confidence in everything all the time. So if you align confidence to a task or an outcome, then there are certain things that you can then do. For example, you can get some help, you can get some skill, you can get some knowledge, you can get some things that help you to enhance your capability to do the task. You can get some evidence of either doing it before or from somebody else. And then when you accumulate all of that, you become better equipped. If you become better equipped for the task, you have a greater chance of success, or at least to learn some positive things from the task. So I often say to people, my tips for confidence is isolate it to a task. Case in point, if you give me anything to do with cooking, the outcome won't be very good. Right? So if someone say, Colin, are you confident at cooking? I'll say no. But what I will do is I'll get some help, get some skill, get some knowledge, and I'll actually improve what I was going to do, which will enhance my confidence for that particular activity. And if you apply that to just about everything, you'll realize for everything in front of you, you can, and then the worst case, the end of the line is, I'll either get help, get skill, get knowledge, get a coach. And if all of that fails, I'll give the task to somebody else to do who's better equipped than me.
Absolutely.
But
And
that's kind
delegate,
of that's
sorry,
the way through it.
absolutely. And delegating is something, a lot of things that, we're all, not very good at. And there are a lot of things that I'm not good at, but I'm always looking at, what can I delegate and what can I learn and where can I get those skills from? Do you think that imposter syndrome can ever be fully conquered, or is it something that is managed as opposed to being fully conquered?
Um, if there are deep-rooted things that kind of got you to that point, in many cases they don't go away. All the therapy in the world, there are lots and lots of interventions, they won't go away. The strategies I've mentioned help to manage those situations because self-doubt exists in all of us. Whether it's amplified to become imposter syndrome, it's still self-doubt. We'll have situations where we say, I'm not sure about what happens next. I'm not sure about what the future holds. I'm not sure I'm equipped to do something moving forward or in the future. We all have those, and they can either stall you, I'm going to stop, I'm paralyzed, or you can go through your own strategy that says, when I get to that point, I do certain things. And when you do those things, let's say in a consistent way, they then become autopilot. So some of the things I've mentioned, I absolutely have those situations where I kind of go, not sure about that. And then I literally go through that decision tree of things I've mentioned and almost get myself better equipped for what happens next. But I'll still start with initial feeling that says, I'm not sure about that. So I think imposter syndrome is the same. If you end up with a strategy that works, that you then refine and perfect, that then becomes autopilot, and then you get to that point, I do certain things. And when you do those things, they become autopilot. So I think It will reduce the amount of times that you're completely paralyzed by it. Of course, there'll be still some where you honestly say, I really have hit a wall, or I really am questioning, should this be me? Could this be me? And that's maybe where others will help, right? So if you have the right support system around, when you really do have that smaller amount that it absolutely, my coping strategy hasn't worked, my execution strategy hasn't worked, I'm really, really struggling, there should be somewhere you can turn.
Absolutely. And how would you say that someone who has imposter syndrome, how can they deal with it in high pressure situations like, say, job interviews or public speaking?
If you look at both of those situations, there's some form of outcome or an execution. There's an expectation of what good looks like, whether it's a good performance in a job interview, whether it's standing on stage, delivering a presentation in a certain way. So a lot of those capability elements you can enhance. So there's a requirement that says if I'm clear on the thing that causes me to stall or paralyzes me, what knowledge, skill can I get? What coaching can I get? That won't necessarily revolutionize, transform that moment, but it will help. And then practice. There are lots and lots of public speaking activities where someone will say, if you go through these and you talk to yourself in the mirror and you talk at yourself, because everyone hates seeing themselves in the mirror. So if you do all those sorts of things, practice then, forget about practice making perfect. Practice just enhances your skill. Practice just makes better. So my tip will always be a lot of the things that I've mentioned earlier on, ensure your capability isn't the thing that debilitates you, right? So if there are other characteristics that will stop or that will cause you pain in that situation, make sure capability isn't one of them because that's something you can affect. So that's the thing I'll always encourage people to do. Make sure that you're capable as best you can, and all the other factors outside of that, in other words, continue to practice your capability, will then help moving forward.
Absolutely. And how do you personally stay confident and motivated even in the face of challenges?
Um, Self-talk. I'm fortunate, I'm blessed having two daughters, and I often talk to them about the power of positive self-talk. So I do talk to myself a lot. There are times when I'll even ask myself, what would I tell my daughter if my daughter was sitting here? If my daughter had this state, was in a paralyzed state or a point of concern, what would I tell her? And I'll tell myself the same thing. So I think positive self-talk has a lot to do with it. And also, and this comes with time, maybe comes with age, comes with life experiences. I believe I deserve a good result. I believe it. I genuinely do believe I deserve good. So even though things are a little bit challenging, even though I'm a bit worried, there's a part of me that says, whatever the North Star is or whatever that pot of gold is in the future, you deserve it. So let's do all the things possible to make sure that you get a positive outcome because you deserve it. And I'll tell myself that in my head. So it starts to energize you to say yes. And you start to feel yourself being uplifted because you know you deserve this. Do all the things that are required to make sure that you realize that outcome.
Absolutely. And I really can get as well with that self-talk because the way we, talk to ourselves sometimes, so negatively, we wouldn't say that to anybody else. We wouldn't say that, to our friends or our family, the way, that negative self-talk in our own minds manifests itself. I couldn't ever imagine saying that to anybody else. So why would I, say that to myself? So that self-talk is so important, from a positivity perspective. How would you say that perhaps leaders or managers could help their teams overcome imposter syndrome and self-doubt?
So I do think that's the big issue. There are probably too many managers, using that term managers rather than leaders. There are too many managers who are almost task centric in their management style. Um, and there are too many managers who think that the right outcome for that task is the way they would have done it. So they can already see a future state of task completion their way. And therefore, they're almost encouraging managing the individual to get to that point. But then if they do that, you suppress all the creativity and the goodness in the individual to get to the same end result. Might be slightly differently. It might even be an enhanced end result if you allow that creativity to be unlocked. So I think we need to retrain managers. I think I'm a big believer in managers as coaches, because then if you're a coach, you shift you put an awful lot of the onus in getting the outcome on the individual. In other words, I'm going to offer you some suggestions. I may well help you with some prioritization, but how you do it is down to you. All of the externalized capability to get the end result is you, right? I'm a big believer in managers as coaches. I don't think coaching
Mm.
is, and I mean truly conscious coaching as a management style, is reinforced enough in the corporate world. It's a almost old school command and control type management and in top down leadership. But this coaching behavior is what I'd like to see more in organizations, which will then help individuals to believe they can do more, they are worth more, and that this individual next to them, their line manager, is there for their good, right? I'm here to help you become the best version of you. Right, that's what a coach should do. That's why
Yeah.
that thing is very, very important to me. And then that will help to diffuse and dilute some of those feelings of I'm not worth it, I'm not worthy, because I've kind of got someone next to me who just said I am, and they're going to do everything possible to help me with that. That's great. It's a different relationship.
Absolutely. And yeah, some of the best managers that I've had or been in contact with have had those, coaching skills that you've talked about. And it's something I would love to see, rolled out to management across the board of having those coaching skills in place. What advice would you have for people who are struggling with comparing themselves to others?
Um, In the corporate world, that's very common because it's a competitive world, right? You kind of measure people based on progress. You've kind of got your expectation. You put people in boxes. That's the level, that's the level, that's the level. So you can't not. Um, that's not necessarily an easy one. The manager you have around you will help with that. I think there is a part where you can't not do that, because there is a yardstick of expected behaviour. But then again, a lot of that comes back to the individual believing that they have qualities that they have qualities of value. If those qualities are suppressed by others, so they're never found by the individual, they become effectively an empty vessel of other people's behaviours, right? So the most important thing is making sure the individual is aware of those unique qualities and characteristics that make them them, and almost help them to maximize those in the workplace, as opposed to believing they have to be a clone of some other great person. Why can't you be like that as the person who's the greatest salesperson? Or can't I just be the best version of me and be the greatest salesperson my way? Don't need to be like Mark or Julie or whatever. So yeah, it's not an easy one. It requires work. And back to our point about the manager, but management style. The management style of the person who leads that environment, um, is very, very key to that.
Absolutely. And what would you say to someone who feels that they don't deserve their success?
They do.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
my first response is you do. You're not on this earth for an indefinite amount of time. You're in this earth for a finite amount of time. You deserve the best possible life, and you deserve the ability and the inputs required to be the best version of you at any time. That starts you being a version of you that you're quite happy with, that you then enhance to become better and better and better and better and better. You'll never be perfect, you'll never be best, but you can be better every single day. So that's kind of how dare I say, I bring up my daughters. I don't want them to be me. I don't want them to achieve what I achieved. I just want them to have a great life and be um, better every day than they were the previous day. And they'll define what better is. Is that 1% better, 10% better, 100% better? You
Yeah.
decide. But just believe you deserve better. And
Yeah.
I'll help you with that.
Absolutely, because we all absolutely deserve better, and that's an incredible, thing that you can pass on, and just really inspiring. What's one small actionable step that people can take today to help boost their confidence?
Yeah, it'll come back to the bits I've meant. Capability. Capability is
Mm,
everything.
yeah.
Um, your If there are other reasons, other factors that start to disarm you or debilitate you, things outside of your control. Unconscious bias from another individual. All those things are outside of your control. The bit that's within your control is capability. Right? You have the power for whatever the outcome is. Because remember, I mentioned I think confidence is aligned to an outcome or a task. Back to me, my cooking. I have the power to go and download something from YouTube and get a book and maybe get somebody who's got more skill than me. I have the power to enhance my capability to perform that task. And then I'll get to a level where I'll say either good enough or acceptable or even slightly better than that. If I get to that point, if there are other things that will then limit my ability to execute on that, we can deal with those. What someone can't do is pour a massive capability into you that you haven't got. Right? You're almost setting yourself up to fail if you're not capable. So my main tip would be for the task in hand, for the outcome that you expect, invest in the right capability to perform that task so you haven't effectively tied your legs, your feet together from the start.
Absolutely. And how can someone build long-term resilience rather than just short bursts of confidence?
I'm not a writer. I don't write journals. I don't make notes.
Mm.
A lot of people now have various tools that they can do that with.
Yeah.
I think you've got to record your successes. If you do that, I've mentioned this to my own daughters. If you chronicle your successes, just been no illusion, you remember all the bad things that have gone badly. You do. You can't forget those, right? You've got a mass of those. Tell me all the things that went bad. You can relate a list. Tell me the handful of things you did well. Everyone kind of stalls and goes, hmm. So if you
Yeah.
start to chronicle your successes, document them, write them down, tell other people who then remember them, and they'll play them back to you. You need those in tough times. At tough times when you've got an obstacle and you want something, you want to go back to my evidence to say, show me a point in time where I actually delivered an outcome or I overcame something similar. Show me a point in time. In other words, show me something good that I achieved. You go blank. But guess
Yeah.
what? The stuff you've written down, it's there. The people you've told, it's there. And that's why having a good support system, unbeknown to them and you, they're actually supplying you with that evidence-based fuel of past success that you need to overcome obstacles. You need to build resilience. You need to believe I can get through this, right? So my tip would always be to, and that's probably what I do make a mental note of
Mm.
those points of goodness and those high points. So when the dark days come, I kind of pull on them and say, you know what? I'm struggling at the moment, but I know I can do this because of X in the past.
Absolutely. I'm a huge fan of journaling. I do that a lot in my spare time, and I love doing bullet journaling as well. So I also keep a success journal, and I do exactly that. I note down a lot of the things that I've done and I've achieved, and so. And some days it could be as simple as I got up this morning and I
For
showed up
today.
and I was at my desk.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be seismic. It doesn't have to be profound. It just had to
Yep.
be something that you wrote down and say, achieved.
Yeah. Absolutely. And then I can look back on all of that and remind myself of, gosh, yes, I did do that. I did do that talk, or I, stood
Yes.
upon that stage, or, or whatever it is. And you're so right. It does help in the in the sort of tough times when you're struggling a little bit more to be able to look back on all those achievements and successes and sort of think, yeah, I did that. So if I can do
I
that,
am
yeah,
worthy.
yeah.
I am worthy. That's the net of it is, I am worthy.
Absolutely. Love that one. Um, what's the most surprising thing that you've learned in your years of coaching?
But it doesn't happen enough.
Mm,
That's the most surprising thing. It just doesn't happen
yeah,
enough. We look at sports professionals and whatever it's going to be, all those, if sport is often the pinnacle of human capability and ability, and we do that, and we see them with coaches and banks of coaches and whatever it's going to be, and they go from, 4 years ago their time was this, 4 years later they win a gold medal, right? So we see there was a process, there was some inputs, there were some people invested, and those people helped them to become that. So why don't we believe that also works in other walks of life? And my main thing
absolutely.
is, doesn't happen enough.
Absolutely. Um, and if confidence was a superpower, what would you say that its weaknesses would be?
Um, so I'm not one of these people with that lazy language that says you can do anything that you want to do. You can do anything you put your mind to. Absolute rubbish.
Mm.
There are physical, cognitive, biological reasons why certain people can't do certain things, right? So that to me is nonsense, right? So that's the main thing. Um, so I'd say what it can do is it can bleed over into a lack of realism. It can distort realism, right? It can you still have to be realistic, right? Um, so that's the main thing.
Yeah. Absolutely. And just as we wrap up this conversation today, which, by the way, I could talk to you for hours, Colin, it's been fantastic. But as we wrap up, are there any final words or pieces of advice or anything you would like to share with the audience today, particularly around imposter syndrome?
First thing is thank you to you for even for doing this and raising this awareness. The main thing is um, people just don't feel that you're alone because it happens to men and women. Don't feel that's an illness. It's not an illness as such. It's something that with the right strategies can be affected, and we touched on earlier on. Can it be solved? Not always, but you can absolutely affect it, and you can increase the amount of positive outcomes that you get, and reduce the amount of times that you're completely disabled or disarmed by it. Um, and back to my last point: believe that you're worthy.
Yeah.
Believe that you deserve all these things that you're telling yourself you don't. Believe that you do.
Absolutely. Colin, thank you so much for joining me today on the 5th International Imposter Syndrome Awareness Day. I'm sure our audience and everybody listening will be able to take some fantastic tips and some key takeaways from this discussion. So again, thank you so much for joining me.
For having me.
Do stay with us today. We've got some other great talks and events coming up. And join us as well on our social media channels, on our LinkedIn page and over on X and our other channels, because we don't just have these talks, we've got a lot of discussion going on today around imposter syndrome. So do keep getting involved, and we'll see you on the next event.